Hi, this is Elizabeth, one of the co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
to save the USA's life in this World Cup. Paul, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the slipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people.
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
You may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The Cheap Seats.
Hello, Cheap Seats fans. Welcome back to another episode of The Cheap Seats on this Tuesday, April 25th. Boy, we're already getting through April. Sort of hard to believe that. And we have the most special time in sports here in the spring with the NHL and the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Welcome inside The Cheap Seats here on the Public House Media Network. My name is Geoff Chiles, and alongside me up here in the nosebleeds, Max Wolpoff, ready for a full show of bantering, bickering, back and forth, and just enjoying the best that sports has to offer. Max, welcome, buddy.
This is easily the most fun time of the year, and it's just getting better and better as the days go by. I am so ready for Game 7 of the Maple Leafs Bruins. It's going to be great.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, and as before we get started, we will start off with Boston-Toronto again, part 2, if you look back to 2013 in that series. But really quickly, give us a like on Facebook, Cheap Seats Sports Podcast on Facebook, again, part of Public House Media Network. Follow me on Twitter at Geoff J. Chiles, and you can follow Max on Twitter.
At Max_WOLPOFF.
All right, Max. Well, we're here again. First round of the playoffs, Game 7, the best words in sports. Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs after the Leafs getting past the Bruins Game 6 on Monday night in Toronto by the skin of their teeth and beating the big bad Bruins to take this thing to a Game 7. And I don't think you or I or anyone would want this any other way, but we got what we wanted. Boston-Toronto, a rematch from 2013.
I can think of a couple Toronto area hospitals that would rather not have it this way, because I have a funny feeling some Leafs fans are going to be enduring some cardiac troubles when they see their Leafs team take the ice in Beantown. It's not going to look pretty.
No, it will not, but if you're a Leafs fan, and from my perspective, if we look back really quickly on Monday night, Freddie Anderson, who is adorned with the cheers from the Leaf fans every time he makes a big save, and he has made a lot of big saves in this series, I think he will be the key. And maybe if you look back at the recent past, Toronto hasn't had the goaltending cachet and the status that they now have with Freddie Anderson. I mean, he has been, I don't even know if I could pick a superlative for this. He has been just surreal in this series. Some of the saves he's made, he's been out of position. He's still been able to recover. Of course, you remember, I think it was Game 5, he made that sliding save with the shaft of the stick where he came across the mouth of the net and made the save there on the side of the goal. I mean, he has been
Game 4.
Unreal. He has been unreal in this series.
He's been the team's MVP, and I don't think there's a single person who can question that without having their knowledge of the series itself questioned. Frederik Andersen being brought in as the Maple Leafs goaltender has solidified that position. They've solidified exactly who they want, stopping pucks. He is steady every single game late in the season. He's steady Freddy, as they call him. I'm excited to see how this works because the last time these two teams were locked in this Game 7 battle, the Leafs also had a steady goaltender who was beyond hot in James Reimer. And Reimer and the Leafs of 2013 spectacularly collapsed. I really don't think this Leafs team is like that. They're a very different team from when they had the 2013 run.
Yeah, that Leafs team had a 3-1 lead in that series. They had a 3-1 or a 4-1 lead in Game 7?
The Bruins had a 3-1 lead in the series. The Maple Leafs forced Game 7. The Maple Leafs had a 4-1 lead over the Bruins with 12 minutes to go. And then the Bruins had the major comeback to tie it before regulation, win it in overtime.
Well, you talk about a series that is the most topsy-turvy you can get. It was that series in 2013. And now we come to 2018 where Toronto is down in the series. They've forced a Game 7, and they have a chance to eliminate their ancient Original Six rivals, the Boston Bruins. Earlier in the week, Mitch Marner said something that I thought was interesting. And a lot of the young guns for the Leafs, and they said, we remember watching that series when we were, not in the NHL yet in 2013, and it was just so crushing. A few of them grew up as Leafs fans, and they said it was so crushing to see that happen. This team, with that mix of youth and veteran status there, and then Freddie Andersen backstopping them in goal, and to have that mix, as I said, of players on that team, I think you're right. I don't think this team is going to be prone to that same type of collapse. I think they've had enough experience now, and they have enough savvy to get the play that they need in Game 7. They already are not worried about Freddie Andersen back there in goal, who has rebounded very, very well and been excellent in this series. And now the Leafs are starting to get production from Mitch Marner. 5-game point streak in the series. Just had a wicked backhand on Monday night that he put past Tuukka Rask. But between Marner and Matthews, who hasn't had a great series, but he played better on Monday night, I think you're right. I don't think this team is going to collapse and fold like we saw 5 years ago.
Now, I want to bring up something about the 5 years ago Toronto Maple Leafs. Here are their top 5 players in ice time from that Game 7. Number 1, Dion Phaneuf, not playing for them. Number 2, Cody Franzen, not playing for them. Jake Gardiner, number 3, he's still there. Carl Gunnarsson, not playing for them. And Joffrey Lupul, not playing for this team. He's on injured reserve. The top 5 guys, there's only one actively still playing for the team, 2 on their roster, and if you go to 6, it's James Van Riemsdyk. This team is different than when they were eliminated last time. They don't have the Colton Orrs of the world clogging up their roster. They don't have Phil Kessel. They have Austin Matthews. They have William Nylander. They have Mitch Marner. And if you want to go veteran leadership, they've got Patrick Marleau.
Yep.
I think the Leafs are different.
They're totally different. I mean, this is, the announcers on Monday night made that point too, and that kind of struck me that not that I didn't think about that, but that the roster makeup and composition of the Leafs is so different to, give them that perspective that, hey, that was a different Maple Leafs team. That team folded against Boston. And yes, Boston's still a great team. They're still an elite team with Bergeron and Patrick and Marland and Marchand and all those guys. But the Leafs are playing, or at least meeting the level that the Bruins have of talent they brought into this series, and the Leafs have been right there every step of the way.
I'm excited to see how this plays out, because if Toronto jumps out to an early lead, it's not safe. If Boston jumps out to an early lead, it's not safe. I'm excited to see where this coin flip game goes. I'm looking forward to watching this.
Look at the first 3 games of this series, and that it shows you what kind of team Toronto is to solidify your point. Boston has scored first in the first 3 games of the series, each time they put Toronto behind the 8 ball. And now, at least in the last 2 games, Toronto has figured out how to respond. So I'm not saying that, sort of what you were alluding to, the one team is not totally out of it over the other if they get down by a goal or so. Toronto knows how to play from behind, and they almost seem comfortable playing from behind.
It's that comeback cardiac mentality where with a young team, they're able to bounce back from things better. And this is a good Leafs team. I've said that when we previewed the first round. I even predicted the Leafs to win. I'm not totally comfortable with that now, but I still think they might pull this out.
Well, here's the thing. We can get to predictions, too, about how, awesome this Game 7 is going to be. And since we're not a fan of either of these teams, it's even better. But I've had my team in a Game 7. You were on pins and needles. It is nerve-wracking. I'm pacing around the room, wondering if my heart is going to explode. That's how awesome Game 7s are. But you and I have no stake in either team in this Game 7. That's going to make it better. But when I look at this Game 7, I think about the first part of the series. And I think about we were waiting for, before Game 6 happened Monday night, we're waiting for Austin Matthews to be that dominant force, waiting for William Nylander to play better in the offensive zone. And they didn't rack up the score sheet in Game 6, but you had to like what they did offensively on the forecheck. They were creating other things. And if Nylander and Matthews play at that level and in fact go beyond it and produce in Game 7, I gotta like Toronto in this game.
And I do too, but I still am wondering here, with Boston and Toronto, they're going to face Tampa Bay next. Tampa's well in there already. They are a buzzsaw. I give the Leafs their forward depth, and I give a good matchup, but at the same time, Vasilevsky's great in net for the Lightning, and man, if Toronto advances, I see a fun series, but I don't see the Leafs coming out of it. But if Boston advances, I'd be willing to give the big line of Boston a chance against the big line of Tampa.
That's a great point, and we can play for the hypotheticals for both of those. Just watching Tampa Bay in the New Jersey series, and give credit to the Devils, is they made it interesting for a brief moment. But Tampa's blue line and how much depth they have there, I don't care if it's Boston or Toronto. I think that's going to prove major problems for whether it's the Bruins or the Maple Leafs in this game, because you have this blue line, which everybody knows about Victor Hedman. But then you have Nemestikov, you have Anton Stralman, you have all these pieces on defense and a Tampa Bay team that Steve Yzerman added to them in the offseason, and he added that youth for them. If you look up on the front lines with Yanni Gordon and Sergachev. So Tampa Bay, they got the veteran experience, they got the youth, they got the deep blue line. And oh, by the way, Vasilevsky has just come in for Tampa Bay and proven that he's not just a Ben Bishop 2.0. He's a number one, and he's a better goaltender. 53 saves for him between games 4 and 5 against New Jersey. And don't forget, absolutely stoning, earlier in that New Jersey series, Zajac on that breakaway. So Vasilevsky have been there in those big moments. And I think Tampa Bay, no matter who advances out of Boston and Toronto, the Lightning are playing at a different level.
The Lightning are that much farther ahead than either the Bruins or the Leafs. I think both the Bruins and the Leafs are at least a year, maybe 2, away from taking the Lightning off that perch. But the Lightning are probably going to take whoever they end up facing. I still give the Bruins a better chance.
I do too. I mean, you look at their experience. You talk about Marchand and Bergeron and Krejci if he's healthy, like that whole first line. I think they will put pressure on Tampa Bay's D and put pressure on Hedman and the big D core back there in this series. But still, though, the interesting thing about that first round series that the Lightning had with New Jersey, they held Hischier to 1 goal all series. The PK held the Devils to 3 of 19 on the power play. Don't just assume that Boston's going to walk right into that series and just put all these kind of crazy numbers up on Tampa Bay's D. Tampa Bay's D, like their O, is deep and talented, but I think they could really put the clamps down on Boston if the Bruins did advance.
It's the one thing that has the advantage over both Toronto and Boston. Both the Leafs and the Bruins have high-flying offenses, but when it comes to the Lightning, they have the defense to match their offense. They have the skill on all three facets of the game, offense, defense, and goaltending. The Lightning are a more complete team.
All right, that is our opening segment here on this Wednesday morning on the Cheap Seats. We're going to take a break right now, but before we go there, we want to mention our poll question for you today. And Max, give us the poll question today.
Oh boy, who do you have, Leafs or Bruins in Game 7? Remember, the Bruins are the home team. The last time these teams faced in Game 7, the Bruins won in overtime. We've made that point a couple times now. But the Leafs, they've now won 2 straight to tie this series up. It's gonna be fun!
And you, our loyal listener, have all the fodder you need to give an accurate prediction and answer our poll question. Go to the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast Facebook page right now. Find it at Cheap Seats Sports on Facebook. Vote in our poll question. Game 7, who you got? Leafs, Bruins. I got Leafs. Max?
I got Leafs.
All right, we're going Leafs across the board today on our poll question. You can find it on the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast Facebook page. Max, really quickly, let's get to these briefly, and then maybe we can get into them more in depth after. We have a couple more second round series set. The Vegas Golden Knights and the San Jose Sharks, along with the Nashville Predators and the Winnipeg Jets. Really quick look at those series.
The Predators have the blue line to match Winnipeg's offense, and with the playoffs, the better defense tends to win out over the better offense. I think the Predators are a little too strong right now, unless Connor Hellebuck in net for Winnipeg can pull out a couple big ones. I think the Predators are going to advance to another Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, the defending Western Conference champions, I think that's as good a pick as any. Both these teams had stellar goaltending. We've had really, outside of maybe like the Pittsburgh-Phillies series, we've had really good goaltending in the first round of the playoffs. This is a team that I think a lot of people wanted to see this matchup in the West Final. It will make the second round, which is usually the most bland round in the playoffs, a little bit more interesting. Pecorine, Connor Hellebuck, both these guys are finalists for the Vezina Trophy. Hellebuck had shutouts against the Wild in games 4 and 5. But Pecorine, we know how prone he is to making just an unbelievable save at any given moment in time. I think defensively, you're right. Nashville has the blue line to shut down Winnipeg's offense, but Winnipeg, even though they might not be able to go toe-to-toe with Nashville's D, the Preds have got to keep Blake Wheeler to the outside here in this series, I think, and keep him out of prime scoring areas. Same for Patrick Laine, who had a good first round. But I agree with you. I still think it's going to be Nashville in this series in round 2.
If Winnipeg can get their offense going, they're going to cause problems, but I can't look past the top 4 defenders for Nashville. It's too big of an obstacle.
All right, we'll have more in-depth analysis of the second round of Stanley Cup Playoffs. We're going to take a break right now, but Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles with you here on the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas with your neon flashing and your... All
right, welcome back to the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. Jeffrey Chiles, your host this morning, as always, every week alongside Max Wolpoff. A little Viva Las Vegas for you, right, as we get going here on our second round preview of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Max, are you Viva Las Vegas?
I never would have really thought this song would be used to hype a hockey game. I never even considered that before this year. But yeah, I'm getting pretty hyped for the Golden Knights.
Oh, man. Christian Heimel throwing every sort of curveball at us every week here on the Cheap Seats. We will get into Las Vegas and San Jose, but I think the series on the tip of everyone's tongue that everyone wants to talk about, what I know you want to talk about is Pittsburgh and Washington. Well, let me back that up. Let's leave that treat for the listeners to the end of the segment. How about it?
Thank you. I would like a delay on my heart attack.
We don't want any cardiac arrests here live on the air on our podcast. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles. Second round preview series here in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. The Las Vegas Golden Knights, the stories of the playoff, the expansion franchise out there near the West Coast, the San Jose Sharks, more veteran team. They've been here before. Las Vegas and San Jose. Vegas has more of the offensive skill and the star power in the first round against the Kings, beating the Kings in that series. San Jose acquiring Evander Kane at the trade deadline. But I think this series, when I look at what I think will decide it, Marc-Andre Fleury for Las Vegas, who's had an excellent first round, and then Martin Jones, who has sort of quietly made some solid saves as well in goal for the Sharks. I'm looking forward to this goaltending matchup.
It's going to be great, but I think the Sharks had a much easier road to the second round than the Golden Knights did. The Golden Knights had to go through a LA Kings team that had a great goaltender in net in Jonathan Quick, who I think had a 9.4 something save percentage, like 94%, even though his team lost all 4 games. That's incredible. But if you look at the Ducks, they were banged up. They didn't have their top goaltender for a while. They didn't have their best defense. They didn't really have that great of an offensive attack. And San Jose ate them alive. No pun intended with the Sharks thing. But they just completely torched the Ducks on some nights. It wasn't even fair.
They did, and now we move on to this series, San Jose and Las Vegas. I think
Geoff,
the other aspect of this... Sorry,
Geoff,
go ahead.
I was hoping you would catch the Eric Fair joke there.
Oh, no, I missed it, man. I'm locked in. I'm sorry.
I was really hoping you'd catch that, but it's all right. It buzzed over your head. That's fine.
Oh, man. See, here's me. There's my head. There's the joke. Las Vegas and San Jose. The other aspect of this series I think is really intriguing is that you have great goaltending, but you have a sort of matchup of similar styles in this series. The Knights owned LA in that first round. They got out in transition. They proved they could play a little more physical, but the speed for the Knights and the speed they have really roster wide is really impressive to see in that first round series. And San Jose, not to be outdone, has a lot of quick speed. They can move up the ice quickly, go from defense to offense. There wasn't really a player in that first round series that I thought really dominated offensively for Vegas. Although Jonathan Marchessault did play a pretty solid first round series. But overall, I think speed versus speed is going to be another aspect we have to look at in this series.
And it's a fun new wave playoff series. I've discussed this before with our banter back and forth, that the new playoffs are all about speed and how fast your team is and how quickly they can create a goal. And I don't think there's a faster team in the NHL right now than the Vegas Golden Knights. They've built their roster to outrun everybody. They kind of have that mentality of, we're going to be the best conditioned team. We may not be the best team on the ice, but we're going to outcondition you. We're going to outplay you. We're going to be ready to beat you to the ground on every single loose puck. And if you're not ready for that, you have a long night ahead of you.
That they do, and you're right. It doesn't matter if it's on the forecheck in transition. They get their power play going, which isn't going to wow you really with any numbers as far as their power play is concerned. I mean, really, you want to look at specialty teams in this series. It's probably going to be San Jose's penalty kill, which was just below 85% on the season. But Vegas, here's the other thing to me that just really sort of made me stop and take notice for a second, Max, is that Vegas didn't have, like I talked about Marchessault, Vegas in that first round series didn't have like some jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring offensive performance. I mean, their leading scorer in the playoff was Riley Smith with 3 assists and 3 points. So it's not like William Karlsson went off against the LA Kings. It's not like Theodore, who only had 2 points, did something amazing. Las Vegas punked LA in that series, and they weren't even operating at 100%.
Yeah, so, Geoff, do you remember the combined score of this series?
I can't say I looked it up. Why don't you enlighten me?
Okay, LA had 3 goals. The Vegas Golden Knights had 7 in 4 games. In one night alone, the Sharks put up 7 against the Ducks. They put up 8. I'm sorry, they got the 2-point conversion. They put up 8 against the Ducks. 8.
Now, would you say that for Vegas in that series, that was more the Kings and Jonathan Quick limiting Vegas, or was Vegas just snake bit in that series?
No, it was Jonathan Quick and the Kings defense, which is very good, but their offense did not show up for 4 games straight, and you can't win a playoff series if your offense doesn't score your goals. I know, great. Hot take analysis right there.
That's very true. You need to put the puck in the back of the net. But that was sort of a flip-flop of what those teams showed during the regular season. Vegas was 5th in the regular season, goals for. San Jose in goals for in the regular season was about middle of the pack in the league at 13th in the league. So we kind of had that game, both those teams turned their habits on their head in that first-round series.
I'm excited to see where this goes with this, because the San Jose Sharks are definitely the hotter team. They definitely do have the bigger wins. But Vegas has been battle-tested. They went up against a really good team in LA, even though they swept them. Like, this was one of the closer 4-game sweeps of all time. And I'm not afraid to say that. Jonathan Quick was amazing. The offense in front of him stunk, and the defense was average. The Golden Knights just outpaced them for every loose puck and were able to get the goals they needed.
And you look at San Jose, and you look at what they did to Anaheim in their series. The Sharks, again, we talked about the burst of offense from them in the first round. They outscored Anaheim 16-4 in that series. And they still allowed 33 shots a game, but Martin Jones is really emerging, I think, in terms of his first real year as a full-time starter, laying that base for I don't know, it's just one round. I don't want to jinx him. I don't want to say Conn Smythe. He's got to get there first, but Martin Jones had a .970 save percentage in that round, and guess who he was second to? Marc-Andre Fleury.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and so I still think we'll wrap up here San Jose and Vegas. This is going to be a fun series. I think it's going to be a lot of speed, up and down series. We'll have to see if Evander Kane continues to make an impact for San Jose, and if the star power for the Knights actually show up this time around. But I still think this is going to be a goaltending matchup in the series. Do we want to give our predictions now or later?
Let's give our predictions at the end. Let's make people wait.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll do a little tease, as they call it in the business. Give our predictions for the second round later on. Moving on in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and as we look ahead to these series in the second round, we don't know who Tampa will play in the second round. We've sort of touched enough on Nashville, Winnipeg, don't you think?
Yeah, I think we've touched enough on Nashville, Winnipeg. That again, it's offense against defense. I think defense is going to overpower the offense here, but I would not be surprised if Winnipeg takes it to 7.
Yep, I think it's going to be a close series as well. I still think Nashville with the experience, and they have the edge. They've gotten good play up front from Philip Forsberg. As good as Nashville has been, with their forwards there, with Wheeler, who's a terror in the middle, and Liney, and they can create offense from the back end. I still think it's going to be Nashville, probably, like you said, 6 or 7 as well. And let's move on now to your favorite series coming up, the longtime rivalry, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, and your Washington Capitals, Max. We're going to let you have the floor. Take it away, buddy.
I'm not emotionally or physically ready for this series for a third consecutive year. Every time these teams face each other, whether I'm in the building or whether I'm watching on television, or heck, even in the car listening on radio, I can feel my heart trying to escape its chest cavity. I can feel my ribs pounding against my skin. I can feel the blood coursing through my arteries and veins with every single scoring chance for both teams. I can feel the fear in my eyes when I see Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin trading passes with the puck. I am so not physically healthy enough to endure another series of this. I can't. I
thought you were writing a novel there. It was very descriptive.
Well, that's what you get when you talk to a sports writer. I'm not ready for this, man. I'm not.
This is hard for me to believe. I'm looking at a preview here in front of me. Crosby and Ovechkin, Caps Pens. This is their first meeting since 2009. Is that right?
Wait, huh? Where are you reading that?
This is NHL.com right now.
Scroll up to the date line on that for a second. I don't think you have this right. Yeah, there we go.
This is a couple years ago. Thanks, Google.
Scroll up to the date line. Come on.
Caps Pens. This is their third. So this is their third straight meeting in the playoffs.
Yep, 3 years in a row. And every year it's been when is Pittsburgh going to cave the ceiling in for Washington? It's just impending dread whenever Washington heads up against Pittsburgh. Impending doom is always around the corner.
Impending doom is right, and Washington finishing off the comeback against Columbus last night. Alex Ovechkin, big goal in that clinching
Monday
night, clinching game for the Capitals. And I guess I really want to get your in-depth thoughts on this series. Like, will Washington figure it out now that they changed goaltenders, which is normally a death knell for a team. Braden Holtby taking over in net for Washington, and is it finally the year that Alex Ovechkin and Holtby and this entire Capitals team gets it done against a star-studded Pittsburgh team?
What Pittsburgh has had the last few times is they've always managed to get the contributions of somebody the Capitals haven't seen. Jake Gensel is that person this year. However, the Capitals have one good thing going for them, and that is the amount of players they have from the Hershey Bears who have seen Jake Gensel play with Wilkes-Barre Scranton in the AHL, who have seen how he handles the puck and who know his tendencies. I'm going to say right now, if there is anybody on the Capitals that knows how to contain Jake Gensel, it's going to be the likes of Christian Juice on the back end. The young rookie defenseman knows how to handle his work. He saw Gensel a lot in the AHL. I understand the NHL is different from the AHL, but you can still see this. The Capitals have to take a Hershey Bears mentality into this game. The Hershey Bears are the most successful AHL team in history. They have to take the mentality of, we are this team, and of course we're going to win this. If they walk in with the here we go again mentality, the series is over before it starts.
They have to, and Alex Ovechkin, he had that mentality in the latter part of the series, or really 5 goals the whole series. Capitals facing Pittsburgh in the second round for the 4th straight year. Third straight year, sorry. And so now you have a series, Washington had to emerge from a 2-0 hole against Columbus. They had to win 3 straight and then win 4 straight and win the series. And does that experience give them what they need to topple Pittsburgh?
I think going into a hostile environment like Columbus is a good warm-up act for heading into Pittsburgh, because if there's something the Capitals have learned playing in Pittsburgh and against Pittsburgh, that city's relentless, and they expect their team to kill you. And it's kind of like a gladiatorial combat where the Penguins are basically Russell Crowe's character all the time, and they have their opponent, and it's always the Capitals, and every time it's always thumbs down. They want to see death. They want to see the domination on the ice, and they have the team to do it. But Philly proved something against Pittsburgh that last year Philly and anyone who came before was not able to do. They proved the Penguins are vulnerable. They will let in goals. You just have to stop the Penguins from scoring, which is a tall order.
That's a tall order indeed. Let's quickly wrap it up here in our second segment. I'll just give off the names of the series, the 2 participants, and you give me who wins and how many games. Nashville, Winnipeg.
Nashville in 6, but it's going to be a close 6. I would not be shocked if Winnipeg takes it to 7, but I still think Nashville's defense is too much.
Yep, I'm with you. Nashville in 7, plus you have Pecorine, always a trump card for me. Las Vegas and San Jose.
Vegas in 7. I really think the Sharks are going to take them the distance, but Vegas is probably going to take it in a big one.
Part of me is inclined to say San Jose, looking at how Vegas' offense didn't really show up in that first round series. I think they're going to wake up. I think they'll figure it out. I think we have Vegas in 6 in that series. Moving on, I guess you have to extrapolate a little bit here. Tampa Bay against the winner of Boston-Toronto.
I still think Tampa Bay wins regardless, but if it's the Leafs, I give them 5. If it's the Bruins, I give it 6.
Yep, I have Tampa Bay moving on here as well. I think the Bruins have a little bit more experience, and you're right. I think they will take them a little bit further in that series. But if it is Toronto, I think Toronto doesn't know otherwise. They don't know that they're not supposed to compete in that series, but I still think it's Tampa Bay in 6, too deep on the blue line, too deep up front. And then finally, Washington and Pittsburgh.
Penguins in 7.
You sounded very hurt having to say that.
I don't want to be right.
Washington, Pittsburgh. Is this the year that the Caps finally get it done? I want to think that. Everything in that comeback from Columbus has given me good vibes. I want to say that. I want to say Holtby and Net is going to be the difference, but Washington has Alex Ovechkin, and they don't have much else in terms of scoring prowess going into the series. Pittsburgh, they can throw Crosby at you. Malkin, even though he was a little banged up. Gensel, I think Pittsburgh's offense will overwhelm the Caps. I think it'll be a 6-game series.
I wouldn't be shocked either way, but besides, I didn't expect the Capitals to come back against the Blue Jackets, so this is just icing on the cake if they can even take this to 7.
All right, that's our look at the Stanley Cup playoffs. We've had fun talking with you every single week here on the Cheap Seats. Again, you can go to our Facebook page, Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. You can vote on our poll question. Go check out the Cheap Seats store, phmedia.com. It's Max Wolpoff. It's Jeffrey Chiles. Back to talk NFL draft, a quick rundown of the draft, a look at the top prospects entering the NFL this year. That and more on the other side. This is the Cheap Seats on the Public House Media Network.
This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Completely Serious, where we talk about sports and have fun with great guests. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Completely Serious. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas.
All right, welcome back to the Cheap Seats here this Wednesday morning, April 25th on our podcast. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles. A little bit of a Western theme coming back, a little bit different, but hey, we roll with different here in the Cheap Seats.
It's fun sometimes to really look at how different the NFL is from any other draft in the entirety of sports. This draft is a spectacle made for television.
It is, and you have all kinds of television coverage. You have ESPN. They normally carry the draft. NFL Network has their own coverage. I mean, people just go nuts over it. I think they're more concerned about their fantasy team and how that will shape out in the years to come. But in any event, the draft, the NFL draft, is one of the more fun things in sports. We're here to talk about it with you here on this Thursday morning. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles. Quick rundown of the draft order. Of course, Cleveland has 2 top 5 picks. They pick number 1 overall, Giants at number 2. The Jets got their 3rd pick from the Colts. Then the Browns at 4. They got their 4th pick from Houston. Denver at 5, Indianapolis at 6, Tampa 7, the Chicago Bears at 8, Niners check in at 9, and then the Oakland Raiders at 10. Anything from the order that sticks out to you to start?
What sticks out to me is where the Colts managed to get out of where they were. I mean, the Colts had this problem a couple of years ago when Peyton Manning had his neck injury, and then they stunk, and then they were all the way near the bottom of the draft. They ended up getting Andrew Luck. The Colts seem to be confident that Luck is going to return and be the same Andrew Luck that they're used to. But what really sticks out to me is what the heck is Arizona going to do? I mean, Arizona has a lot of power to potentially move up, and Denver may not need that 5th overall pick. I'm seeing a lot of mock drafts are saying they're going to trade it to Arizona.
Yeah, we'll see what the Broncos do right there. That could be anyone's guess. It's sort of they figure out where they're going to go now in their future. I mean, a lot of mock drafts too have them taking Josh Allen out of Wyoming at number 5, and their quarterback position has been so unsettled that we know how important a quarterback is in football and really in the NFL. A lot of people thinking that the Broncos will take Josh Allen out of Wyoming. And if you look at the rundown here, and we see, obviously the thing that sticks out, Cleveland has 2 of the top 5 picks in the first round of the draft. We all know where the star power is here, Max, to start. You have Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma, Sam Darnold, the golden child there out in Southern California for the USC Trojans. Great talent for him. Josh Rosen across the street at UCLA. He's sort of, I think, matured beyond some of his off-the-field perspective and outlook, and maturing to where he can just focus on football and be that elite quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if we want to go pick by pick, but we can talk about the Browns, what the Giants will do, really some of the more intriguing things here in the first round. For you, what is most important? And I guess we shall start with Cleveland. What will they do with that first pick and then the 4th pick?
Cleveland needs to make a choice with their first 2 picks in this critical draft for their future. Do they pick the best player available, or do they pick the player for the position that they need? If they pick the best player available, there shouldn't be a single doubt Saquon Barkley is going to be donning a Cleveland hat by the first couple minutes of the night. If they draft for the position that they need, I mean, they kind of need everybody. Like, they need a team. So where do you start building a team? Probably quarterback. And they have their slew of picks to choose from, whether that's Darnold, whether that's Allen, whether that's Mayfield. Heck, even if they want to go way down the board and pick Lamar Jackson. I'm not really sure what Cleveland wants to do here.
They have a lot of ways they can go. They have a lot of holes to fill. I'm of the opinion that, and we can talk about Cleveland's draft history with this, being a Lions fan and seeing what Mark Mayhew did to the Lions for a lot of years, what Matt Millen did, the Lions would almost always go on best player available, and even if they didn't need the player, which meant there were a lot of years of drafting offensive linemen that they didn't need, linebackers that they didn't need, any which way you slice it, the Lions did that, and the Browns have done that in the past too. I think the Browns need to go for position of need, and for them, that's quarterback and defense. Too many times you hear the cookie-cutter response for the GM of, oh, we're going to go with the best player available. And while that sounds good and that sounds sexy, Cleveland has so many holes to fill, and they've had to learn from so many mistakes in the past. Mark Ingram, for example, that didn't really work out for them. Quarterbacks that didn't work out for them. Now they really do need a quarterback, and you need to go for position of need.
And the last quarterback they drafted first round was Johnny Football. Like, we all know how
another shining turd of an example of why that doesn't work.
Like, we all know how well that worked out. And drafting for position is a risky thing, but if you have your player and if you really like their numbers according to your system, then they might pick the best player available according to how they evaluate players, because everybody within the Cleveland room is different than everybody within the ESPN room thinking about this.
Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to just pile on Cleveland, although they do deserve a lot of the criticism they get.
Oh, they do. They absolutely do.
So much of the NFL is, a lot of it falls on the players or the head coach or the GM, but you have to have great scouting. We've seen what Pittsburgh has done, New England. They have great scouts in Cleveland. didn't have that advantage in the room as you're talking about there. And so that's been the issue. We don't really know internally, unless if you want to Google it, who their scouting staff is, but that is so critical to drafting in the NFL and getting input from a wide variety of people. They do need that elite quarterback. And you say, okay, Geoff, well, they've done that in the past. Eric Crouch, it didn't work out for them. Johnny Manziel didn't work out for them. Maybe this is the year that they not only draft correctly, but they get the correct pre-draft input to make that pick. And I think for them, it's Sam Darnold. Excellent footwork. He gets out of the pocket. He can improvise. He can maybe create a little bit for them if they don't have other playmakers on offense. But the one negative for him is, and Cleveland's had this problem too, Darnold had, the fifth highest turnover rate according to Pro Football Focus. So that's exactly what Cleveland doesn't need. They need to hold on to the ball, move their offense, and they need a leader, and I would take Darnold.
Again, the limited times that I've watched that level of college football, because I'm so used to seeing a lot of some big games, especially SEC games, where the quarterbacks and players are more looked at by who they play for. Man, I think the shiny new object thing is probably going to be too much of a draw for Cleveland. I think they're going to get Baker Mayfield for some reason. Mayfield's a great quarterback. He's very good, and he can move, he can improvise, he can engineer a play that out of nothing. I really think the Cleveland Browns are probably going to pick Mayfield, even if everyone else in the world thinks they're either going to pick Darnold or Josh Allen. I seriously have a hard time thinking the Browns are going to pass on Mayfield and then kick themselves down the road. I really think they go after Mayfield.
Moving on here in our draft talk, our draft preview here on Wednesday, on the Cheap Seats podcast here on the Public House Media Network. Second pick, the Giants, after an absolutely abysmal year. We actually talked about the Giants in an earlier episode about what they should do with that truck full of money they have if Eli Manning moves on, whatever happens. I think we were talking about more Odell Beckham. But the Giants have a lot of offensive questions entering this draft. Manning, and now you have a receiving core that's been improved a little bit. It's a better receiving core going into this year. What would be the better weapon for the Giants? I think he's one of the best overall players in the draft. I have the Giants taking Saquon Barkley. I watched him against Michigan last year. The guy is built. He is focused on every play. He is a smart football player. He doesn't have elite size, but he is so fleet of foot that if he can get around the edge on a defense, he is going to be nightmarish. He was nightmarish in college. He'll continue to do that in the NFL. I got the Giants taking Saquon Barkley. I think no-brainer pick right there.
And again, this is one of those things that if Cleveland doesn't pick Barkley, then the Giants just won the draft lottery. They easily won the best player right there. And this should be a slam dunk pick that you easily make. It's hard to screw up a top 5 draft pick. It's hard to screw up something like that. But man, I'm not looking forward to if the Giants mess this up. Because the New York press will be all over it.
Whether it's Saquon Barkley or whether it's Baker Mayfield, they will eat you alive. And you have to wonder if either of those guys, Baker Mayfield coming from a great program like Oklahoma but hasn't had the media scrutiny, Saquon Barkley, Penn State, yeah, they're Big Ten, but they're in Happy Valley, kind of isolated there. They don't have the sort of media attention. That's an underlooked part of the draft as well, is that how can a player handle being grilled by the media off the field? But if we go back and look at Barkley's pure football ability, he's got so many skills that almost no other running back in this draft has. Yes, he can move. He is a speedy back. He can receive balls out of the backfield, which is an underrated skill for a running back. I think he's the more complete back in this class. He can take it to the house in any given play, and he can break away, and he's got that separation speed to get away from defenses.
And this is where the slam dunk aspect could turn into a huge rim rattler out. If the defenses adjust to Barkley, then you're screwed. Like, when you bring in a generational running back, it's easier to adjust because your running back's not going to be involved on every play because sometimes you got to pass the ball. But if you bring in a generational quarterback and you have to adjust every single play, it's much harder for defenses to account for a full game plan than it is to account for half of a game plan or 3/4 of a game plan. That said, the Giants, they've got a really good chance to improve their running game. Just take Barkley. Just take him.
Really quickly, before we move on today and move on to our Weird and Wild Wednesday, today, as we finish up our NFL draft talk, who are the biggest surprises heading into this draft and what will happen as far as this draft? We don't know, who will be every year. It's somebody different. But Max, really quickly, I know I sprung this on you. Do you have a player that you think will be an unknown that may surprise in this draft?
I think one thing that was pointed out in Sports Illustrated's mock draft is that the Green Bay Packers need defense, and the Green Bay Packers have had a huge problem with their cornerback depth. And I think Josh Jackson out of Iowa is easily a tough one to pass on. They've been needing defense for the last couple of years. They've got their offense, they've got receivers, they've got Aaron Rodgers, but on defense is where the Packers have struggled the last few years. Jackson could be a really good, tall, instinctive cornerback to take over in the back end and really bring some help to Green Bay secondary where they've been needing help the last few years. But, man, the Packers just need defensive help. They absolutely need it.
Well, sticking with the Penn State theme, and I watch a lot of Big Ten. I'm a Big Ten guy, so I guess I'll stick with my Big Ten theme here as we look at potential first-round surprises of the 2018 NFL Draft. There are not a lot of good tight ends in this class this year, and there's nothing that's really a sure thing, but we know that every team in the NFL needs a tight end, needs a game-changing tight end. You see what Rob Gronkowski does for teams this year. Mike Gesicki out of Penn State really impressed a lot of people with his athleticism at the combine. He can make the difficult catch. And I think really the Vikings, after falling short in the playoffs last year and their quarterback position maybe getting more solidified this year, their signal caller needs a guy to throw to. Mike Gesicki from Penn State, that's a name to keep an eye on for me.
It's going to be a fun draft, and that's just day one. We're only talking about day one here. There are 3 days of this stuff.
3 days of the draft to look forward to. My Lions don't have as high a pick as they normally do, but I'll tune in just like everybody else. Max, I never asked you, who's your NFL team?
Green Bay. I'm an owner.
Oh, yeah. As are many people owning the Green Bay Packers. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles, that wraps up our NFL Draft preview. When we come back, Weird and Wild Wednesday, and we wrap it up here in the cheap seats on the Public House Media Network.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we hang out and just talk movie and TV news and reviews, and it's awesome. A new show comes out every single Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Cinema Stories. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Where all my line dancers at? Where all my line dancers at?
Oh, do the shuffle.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Them Cleveland boys.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast. Is this actually a remix of the Chicago Shuffle from the 85 Bears?
It might be, and it sounds catchy. I like it.
Well, I heard some MJ, and I'm a big Michael Jackson fan, so I'll allow it. I'll allow it from our producer, Christian Heimel, today on our rejoin here on the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast. Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles, with you to talk sports every Wednesday. Really quickly, we'll get to our Weird and Wild Wednesday, but a really brief look at the NBA playoffs. Max, Cleveland and Indiana now tied at 2 games apiece after a big win from Cleveland on a couple of days ago, 104-100.
Thank goodness this is actually not going to be a coronation ceremony for King James. I've gotten so tired of we can disregard the first 3 rounds, let's just focus on the finals. It'll be the same 2 teams every year. Who you got? Finally, the Pacers are giving the Cavaliers a challenge. I'm looking forward to how the Pacers handle it. I don't know if they're going to win this series, but dang it, do I hope they do. Give me something different. Give me chaos. I want something different in these playoffs. Please, change the story.
So tired of Cleveland and Golden State, and I know a lot of people want to see that again, but for me, it's like watching a movie you've seen 100 times. If we see it once, we're going to see it again. I know that makes me sound like a little bit of a hockey snob, but let's get something different. And so far in this first round, Indiana has given us something different. How about this in Game 4? They had 8 players score in double figures. I mean, if there's any formula maybe to beat Cleveland, even though they didn't win that Game 4, they're getting a lot of balanced scoring from their big guns in this series.
And with Indiana especially, they don't have that game-breaker level talent of LeBron James. They've needed production up and down their lineup, and they've had it. When LeBron James takes that second or third or fourth gear or whatever the heck number gear it is, and he turns it on and becomes the best player in the world like he always is capable of doing, the Cavaliers are unstoppable. But he can't go that max effort all the time or he'll tire himself out. I'm ecstatic that the Pacers are giving Cleveland a challenge. Thank you.
All right, one final thought here on our Wednesday edition of the Cheap Seats, and it's our favorite segment of the day, the Weird and Wild Wednesday, the most bizarre stories that we've seen making the rounds in the news or on the internet recently. Max, the FA Cup, this is European football, or as we know it here in the U.S., soccer. This was a few months ago, actually, but I still thought it was pretty interesting. So, a player who was no longer on Sutton's roster, Wayne Shaw, was sitting, well, not courtside, but near the field of play in his team's match back in September of 2017. And he was sitting there watching the game as Sutton United hosted Arsenal in that game, and Sutton was caught by cameras, caught by the BBC, sitting there eating a shepherd's pie on the sideline. And because he did this, the form book went out the window. They started to call this Pie Gate, and his team was actually suffered a fine or a penalty in this game for eating his shepherd's pie on the sideline because he had, quote, intentionally influenced a football betting market while eating a pie while he sat on the home bench.
I'm sorry, how does that intentionally influence a betting market? Was there a line?
Apparently the officials think that it has some kind of an influence. I have no idea. It's weird. That's why we're talking about it.
I guess you can't have your pie and eat it too.
Oh, there it is. Max Wolpoff.
I am on it today.
The pie pun here on our Wednesday, Weird and Wild Wednesday. The floor is yours, buddy. What is your story that you found that was the most weird in the world of sports?
All right, I have two, if you don't mind. I'll run through them quickly. The first is a meme from the New Jersey Devils. So in one of their 2 playoff games, there was a video review for goaltender interference. So on the center ice video board, they have 2 images. One is a live shot of the referees on the ice at the Prudential Center. The other is a still image of Patrick Starr answering the phone at the Krusty Krab with the caption, Toronto. To say, awesome. Is this the Situation Room? No, this is Patrick.
Nice,
that was hilarious. The second funny story I have is something a little bit more serious, and it goes back to the Game 7 between Toronto and Boston, and a reminder, pray for the Bruins and Leafs fans in your life. It's going to be a stressful one. So for Game 5, a Toronto video blogger by the name of Steve Dangle, he posted on Twitter his Fitbit heart rate tracker from the entire day. So in the morning, he was loading a moving van. In the afternoon, he was unloading said moving van, helping a friend move. In the evening, he was watching the Leafs and the Bruins. His heart rate for those 3 activities was in the same rate. Watching a 3-hour hockey game was as much cardiac output as moving somebody.
Yikes.
Just that, I mean, again, there was a study a few months ago. Hockey's not good for your health, and I think this is a great evidence of 3 hours of watching hockey is akin to basically like somewhat vigorous exercise.
This is why I think I enjoy being a play-by-play broadcaster of hockey instead of watching my team in it. The one good thing about the Wings not being in the playoffs, it is terrible to your health. And right there, that medical citation, you've proven that.
And again, this is a Fitbit tracker. It's not a totally accurate heart rate monitor, but it's about as close as you're going to get with a good snapshots of just the amount of cardiac output you have to have and the amount of cardiac strength it takes to sit through a stressful game.
I wouldn't doubt it. I've been through my share of stressful games, pacing up and down, sweat, nervous sweat, wondering my team's going to pull it out, just freaking out, maybe having a panic attack. And I know you've been there as well, and it is stressful watching your team in a big playoff game. That'll do it for the Cheap Seats here this Wednesday on the Public House Media Network. Another episode in the books for Max Wolpoff, Jeffrey Chiles. Really quickly before we let you go, please go ahead to our Facebook page, Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. Vote on our poll question. Go vote on that. Please go to our store, support the podcast. If you like it, like, comment, rate, subscribe on SoundCloud, Stitcher, phmedia.com, Apple Podcasts. Listen, like, rate, subscribe, and also support us. Help us out. Go buy something with the Cheap Seats logo on it. You'll be comfortable. It'll help us. Everybody wins. That does it for Max Wolpoff and Christian Heimel. I'm Jeffrey Chiles saying so long here in the Cheap Seats in the nosebleeds on the Public House Media Network.